Okay guys, welcome back to Wayne Manor North and welcome to this edition of The Batman Who Builds. As many of you may know, I sometime back, a while ago now, maybe even a year ago, I did a video chronicling how I build custom displays for my collection room. And I am in the process of building another display. I've posted a couple of preliminary pics on the Facebook group on Batman Statue Collector, but I'm starting another project, or in the middle of a project, to build another display unit. It's pretty much the same, a little bit different. I've used different color and stain on the wood. It's a different format to accommodate different kinds of statues, different format statues, etc. So I thought I'd share that with you. I wasn't planning on it, but I did get several requests in the Facebook group, so I thought I'd go ahead and do that. So I thought, make this brief video. I'll take you through what materials I used, what the format of the unit will look like, and we'll go from there. Let's get building. Okay, so let's get into it. I thought what we'd do is I will first take you through kind of what the raw materials are. I'll switch the camera around and give you some close-ups on some of these things. I'll show you exactly what materials I used in terms of stains and finishes, and then the hardware, wood, etc. I'll take you through that process, and then we'll actually build a little bit of this and start assembling it. The stain and the finish is already done, so I'm actually at the point in the process where I'm going to start assembling. So I thought you guys might like to have a look at that, and we'll do some of that. All right, let's get started. Okay guys, let's go ahead and get started. I thought we'd start with the wood that I'm using for the 3 shelves that'll make up this display unit. The wood that I'm using is a birch plywood, and there are a few benefits associated with using birch and using birch plywood, quite frankly, and one of them is it's an extremely hard wood. So in terms of durability, strength, etc., being able to support heavy statues, this is a really strong wood. Second benefit is, and this is really to taste, I didn't want a heavy wood grain in the shelves, and birch is a fairly clean wood in terms of grain in it. So typically what you'll find with the birch plywood is there's a heavy grain on one side and a very light grain on the other. And actually in the background here, you can see some of the leftover. This is actually the back of one of the boards, and you can see a heavy grain there. Well, on the other side, it's extremely clean and there's almost no grain. So that's what I used. I used the heavier grain side for the back of the shelves, or the underside, and the clean side for the finish, or the top side. So one of the things I wanted to mention too was I also used, because it's a plywood and I didn't want to see the striations in the wood, on the front side of what will be the shelves, I included a finish strip. It's just a simple 3/4 inch clean piece of pine. Comes in a molding already done. I literally just tacked it onto the front with some super glue and some very small finish nails, and it makes a nice clean edge for the front. Alright, you can see here there's a whole bunch of supporting hardwood and materials that I thought I'd share with you, and maybe it makes sense given that we just took a look at the shelving to start with the finish. So you can see I used the Varathane gel stain to do the color, and then the Varathane triple thick polyurethane water-based urethane to do the finish, and I used a semi-gloss finish. I applied it with these sponge brushes, and they're cheap. I think they're $1 a piece, and I just swap into new ones with every coat typically. What I did do was I put one coat on, did a light sand with a 220 grit wet dry sandpaper. I used it dry, and then applied 2 more times, so for a total of 3 coats. Alright guys, let's take a closer look now at the rest of the hardware on this table. Now some of you may remember from my previous build video, this is the same materials that I use for the supports on the other displays. I'm trying to establish consistency across the display room, and this is the look that I'm going for. It's kind of an industrial, I won't go so far as to say steampunk, but I'm using plumbing piping and plumbing flanges that I'll show you here in a second as all of my supports. So let's start with the pipes themselves. So this is 3/4 inch black steel piping, and it comes with a funny kind of waxy coating on it, almost like a thin plastic, it feels like. I sanded that off. I sanded right down to the bare steel. One of the side benefits that I got with this, doing this way, was I noticed in my displays that have been up for a while, is some of the exposed raw metal, just from the humidity that comes into the house at different times of year, I get this very fine kind of rust, and it looks really cool. I mean, it's not, crazy, it's not a ton, but it's kind of a cool effect. It just even plays right into that industrial look that I'm going for. So these are the supports. I have 36-inch supports there. I have 14-inch supports there for a different part of the cabinet. And then I had some spare pieces. These are because I bought the 24-inch pieces. I split to get the 14s. These are the 10s that resulted from that, and I have plans for those that I'll share with you at a different time. And then over here, these are plumbing flanges. They're also the same malleable black steel, 3/4 inch receivers for everything to plug into. These are the screws that I use. They are 1/2 inch, I believe. Nope, sorry, 3/4 inch. And the black ones are hard to find. And at first I just kind of struggled, and I just pulled them from whatever hinges I could find at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever. But then it occurred to me, hey, why not use silverwood screws and just touch the ends up with some black paint? And that's much easier, much cheaper. And so I'll be doing that, and you're not going to see half of them anyways. These are the furniture slides. They're plastic sliders. They are about 1 3/4 inch roughly. And I'll be using 6 or 8 of these on the bottom of the unit to get it up off the floor just a little bit and make it easier to move around. All right guys, now that you've had a look at the raw materials, why don't we go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you putting on some of the flanges to receive the poles. We'll get both levels set up and give you a look at what the process is to assemble these. Super easy. Again, I highly encourage you, if you like the industrial look, if you like having custom display cabinetry or shelving in your collection room, highly encourage you to do this. It's really satisfying. You get exactly what you want. And it's really not that hard. The other thing that I failed to mention, just actually as I touched the board here, it reminded me, I had Home Depot actually cut the wood for me. So this was one 4-foot by 8-foot sheet of 3/4 inch birch plywood, and I knew that I wanted 16 inches deep, and I knew that I wanted 55 inches long, and so I just asked them to cut the wood there for me. You get really super clean, straight cuts, and I don't have to worry about breaking out my table saw, which I never really love to do. So okay, with that, let's go ahead and get started. Let's put some stuff together. Okay guys, let's go ahead and get started. We've got our middle shelf. This is going to be a 3-shelf unit, and this is our middle shelf. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to flip the shelf over. And I've got plastic sawhorses here, so I'm not doing any damage to the finish on the top. And what we're going to do first is we're going to place all 6 of our connecting flanges onto this board. So we'll start there, and once we do that, we'll put the bottom board on here, put the middle board on top, and we'll have our bottom section right there. Okay, so we've got our flanges. We're going to go ahead, set them on the board, and then what I'm going to do is take those 14-inch pipes that I showed you, right here off camera. Those 14-inch pipes, I'll set them each in, measure them to make sure that they're all the same length, including the flange, because they won't all screw in to the same exact depth. So I'm going to want to make sure those are the same so that my shelf is good and level and I don't have any gaps. I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll catch you right back as soon as I've got those screwed in. Be right back. Okay, making progress. We've got our middle shelf. All the pipes are attached. All the flanges are attached to go to the bottom shelf. Everything measures out. I've got exactly 14.5 inches from the base of the shelf here, the underside, to the top of this flange, so it's 14.5 all the way across. You'll notice that a couple of them are a little bit loose. Doesn't matter, because they're going to be bolted in or screwed in at both ends, so that doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take this off of my sawhorses, put the bottom shelf on there, we'll flip it over and attach our first section. Okay, these are those plastic casters that I mentioned earlier. I've got 8 of them. Probably overkill, probably need 6, but might as well use all 8. All right, we've got our furniture glides on the underneath of our bottom shelf here. I've got my middle shelf ready to go with the legs. All we got to do is flip it over, sit it on top, and then I'll let you know what we got to do at that point. A little bit of a couple of tricky moves here, but nothing crazy. Be right back. All right, and we're back, and as you can see, I have my middle shelf in place. We talked about the legs, those are in place. The one tricky piece I wanted to mention, and I won't have you watch me screw all of these bases in again. But the one piece I did want to mention to you that you want to make sure that you get straight, you're going to need one of these. You're going to need a little level, and you're going to want to do, if for those of you that aren't familiar with carpentry or anything similar, you're going to want to plumb the legs, meaning you're going to want them straight in both directions. So you don't want them leaning kind of front to back, you don't want them leaning side to side. A simple level like this, you put the bubble in the middle, and make sure, and you can adjust the legs by hand as you go, and that'll make sure that they're straight up and down. And trust me when I tell you, I've made this mistake before. Having the legs a little crooked in one direction will drive you batty. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Then I think I'm going to have to lower this shelf down because it's too tall for where I am here in my garage under this garage door. And we'll go ahead and get the top piece done as well. All right, here we go. Let's level up. Okay guys, we are trucking along. I've got my top shelf here. I've got my hardware ready to go. And why don't we go ahead, we'll get this top shelf set up. I've got the lower part of the unit there in front of you off frame. Can't see that at the moment. But once we get this piece done, we get the legs stood up, measured, etc., and we're ready to go. We're going to have to move it onto the ground as I've run out of space, like I mentioned before. So we'll go ahead, get that started, and I'll catch you once these legs are on. Be right back. Okay guys, you can see we're in the final stretch. I've got the top part of the unit sitting on top. I just need to kind of plumb each of the legs and make sure that everything is straight and lined up. Screw those in, and we are done. So we're in really good shape. And as you can see, it's a pretty simplistic design that's completely intentional. I tend to be one of those, I like my displays fairly simple. I did incorporate, as you can see, that industrial look with the piping, and I'm kind of liking the way that that looks on here. And now what you might not be able to tell in the video is this display is 55 inches wide, which basically from what I have displayed upstairs already in the collection room, I assume that will hold, from a Prime 1 standpoint, anywhere from, depending on the piece, 2 to 3 statues, maybe 4 if they have a more smaller base. You know, the ones that come to mind with the smaller base are statues like Scarecrow and Two-Face. I have a similar width display upstairs on the other side of the room, and I've got the 2 of them kind of one and halfway in front of the other, and they fit and they look really great together. It doesn't look overly squished together. It actually looks really good. On top, just to give you a sense of what I'm thinking for this display, I'm thinking Batman Hush on one side, probably Queen City 1/3 scale Bale, the Dark Knight. We'll see how that comes along, but that's kind of what I'm thinking for the other side. On the bottom, I'm thinking Batman Noel, as well as Bermeo Joker to be on one side, and Iron Studios Joker on the other. That's kind of the only 3 that I have really planned right now for this, for the middle section, and then on the bottom I've got some smaller things that I'll probably put down there. So that's what I'm thinking right now, just a sneak peek. We'll see how it all pans out. I don't know about Bermeo Joker and the Batman. Those might, I'm not sure how that'll work here in terms of fit, but I think it'll work out okay. So we'll see. At any rate, I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. Then I'll give you a little bit of a quick tour around so you can get a look at the finished product, and we'll call it a video. All right. All right, guys. Guess what? We are done. New display for Wayne Manor North Collector Room is complete. I thought what I'd do is switch the camera around, give you a little bit of a 360 before it heads upstairs. One of the things that you have to do when you're putting a finish like this on is, because this is a 2-part finish, unlike paint, takes a little bit longer to cure. So even though it's completely dry to the touch, you know, no issues there, it's probably not a great idea to put a 50, 60 pound statue or more on top of this right yet, because the finish, the urethane finish on top is still probably a little bit soft underneath, hasn't cured completely. So I'm probably going to give this probably several days upstairs to just really cure really well before I go ahead and put heavy statues on it. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the bottom of the statues that I do put on it, and I might put a little bit softer felt pads on the underside so that they slide a little bit better on this finish. I know sometimes Prime 1 particularly, some of the pads underneath the statues are just very, very thin, almost rubbery kind of pads or foam pads. They don't slide particularly well, which may or may not be intentional actually now that I say that out loud, but I'd like them to slide a little bit easier on this, so just as I move things around and whatnot. So that'll be a tack that I take, but you will see it upstairs in the days ahead. Later this week I'll be posting some pictures in the Facebook group so that everybody can see what it looks like with at least a couple pieces on it, because what I have planned for it, they're not here yet. So let me switch the camera around and give you a look, and we'll wrap this up. Alright guys, here it is. Here is my industrial themed display, intended to hold probably in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 Prime 1 statues. You can see the finish that I was talking about. See all the pieces, all the flanges, the black metal plumbing flanges all screwed down. I used the black screws on top and the silver screws underneath, like we talked about. You can see the finish isn't perfect, but you know what? Not really intended to at the end of the day. It's a very hard finish, several coats of urethane, and I would encourage you guys, you know, give this a try. You know, make the statue display what you want it to be and in the format that you need it to be. One of the things that I love about doing these, A, I love the look. I'm getting the exact look that I want in my collection room, but B, I have a lot more flexibility to build these to the exact size and specification for the spaces they're going in. This one is 55 inches. You'd never find a 55-inch shelving unit like this in any store, right? So, but the space I have fits 55 inches, and so I'm maximizing my space in a way that makes sense aesthetically and functionally for me, and I'm super excited about it. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sharing this with me. I really appreciate you taking a look at this new build. It won't be the last one in the Wayne Manor North Collection Cave, but I know several of you were interested in how I do this and how this kind of works and how I put them together, how I think through the process, etc. I know it's always helped me as I've looked at other collectors and what they do for shelving and display. The beauty of this kind of thing is we all have different tastes, right? We all want to show our collections differently. Some of us want to put them in modular cases, some of us want them out in the open, some of us want them in cubes, some of them want us in the middle of the dining room table, what have you. It's all just great that we can all be creative and display our collections in a way that makes sense for us. I really appreciate you coming through the build process with me. If you liked the video, please like, comment, let me know what you've got in mind. You know, are you building custom shelving for your collection? You know, what do you think about this? If you have any questions for me, please comment below. I'll do my best to answer any questions that you might have. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that. Tons of good content coming all the time from Chris and a whole bunch of us who Chris gives the opportunity to share videos with on the channel. So it's just an awesome community, awesome taking part in it. So please subscribe, tons of great content. Thanks again, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks guys, see you.